Good morning and welcome to the Peorian. I'm your host, Paul Gordon. The opening of the Illinois Asylum for the Incurable Insane in 1902 got the mentally ill off the streets and out of the jails and into a place they could get treatment. But it was celebrated with a parade and a big party. Somehow, today at least, that doesn't seem normal. Then again, not much has been normal with the site since then. The site has had several names in the ensuing decades and finally came to be known as the Peoria State Hospital or the Peoria Asylum, which is actually in Bartonville. It's been closed nearly 40 years, but the main structure, the Bowen Building, remains standing. Purported to be haunted, it already has been a popular spot for ghost hunters, as well as vandals and graffiti artists. Now the village of Bartonville has agreed to TIF funding on the building to get it up to code and reopened as a tourist attraction and for public tours and paranormal investigations, which the owner is sure many people will be glad to pay to do. And I'm sure he's right. But he doesn't want to stop there. Would you spend the night there? The owner, Richard Weiss, and his daughter, Trish, co-founder of the Save the Bowen Foundation, are with me today, and we'll talk about their plans when we come back. Welcome back to the Peorian. My guests today are Richard Weiss, owner of the Bowen Building, and Trish Weiss, co-founder of the Save the Bowen Foundation. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
The Bowen Building, of course, is the main structure of the former Peoria State Hospital, correct?
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. And it once housed the incurable insane. Were they criminally insane as well?
Some of them were.
Okay.
There was a variety of patients kept in the hospital. There were alcoholics kept there. There were schizophrenics, criminally insane, just a variety, epileptics, anything like that. They were kept there at the hospital.
The building is purported to be quite haunted, but then again, most former insane asylums are considered haunted.
Yes, sir.
Is this one haunted?
Yes. In my opinion, it is. I've seen a few unexplainable things that if I don't have an explanation for it, then I consider it to be, if I see an apparition that I can see through, which I have in the building on the first floor when we were able to be in, I saw a full-figured apparition of a woman, and she was white, and I could see right through, and she walked from one side of the hallway to the next. So that right there tells me that it's haunted, as well as the other accounts from the other guests that we've had before.
Did you call out to her or anything?
No, that one actually caught me off guard, so I went back outside. I was the only one there at the time, so I went back outside and sat on the steps until other people got there.
Richard, have you seen anything that you could not explain?
I have not had a personal experience, and I think it's because of the way I was brought up. I'm very scientific and stuff, and it's going to have to basically be right in my face for me to see something. But there's been just way too many things happen to different people for something not to be there. What it is, I can't explain yet, but I have not had a personal experience myself.
You both have seen photos that people have taken where there's
many photos.
The orbs or the mists.
Right, right.
Yeah, orbs I don't consider to be anything but dust because this building's been empty since 1973, and I consider most orbs to be nothing other than dust or moisture or something like that.
Bugs.
But we have a picture that a gentleman took when we did our first fundraiser back in 2008. We were only allowed to go into 6 rooms because of what the village asked us to do, so we built walls where nobody could get past those 6 rooms. And a gentleman from Chicago during the middle of the day took a picture from the back of the building, and you can see a nurse standing in the 2nd-story window, and you can see right through her. And I mean, it's crystal clear.
And the nurse looks period. She's got her hair up in the bun. She has the apron on, the dress, the ruffled collar. Everything looks period style. So anyone who, if it was faked, which I don't think it was, but if it was, they definitely knew quite a bit about what the women wore. So they would have known their stuff, though, too.
Is that photo, can it be seen anywhere?
It's on
our
website.
website.
Is it really? Okay.
I should have brought a picture of it. I didn't even think to do
Well, I've been on your website several times, and I guess I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, it's down in the media section. There's there's probably 600 pictures, but there's not a lot of paranormal items put on there. It's mainly, we wanted to cater more to the history than to the paranormal. We'll probably put up a different website later on, more geared towards paranormal.
Now the cemetery is believed to be haunted as well, correct? Okay, now I understand the appeal that believers have in Old Book. Old Book is the legendary ghost who, he was the grave digger who also cried, sobbed at the grave sites when people were being buried, and supposedly today you can still hear him sobbing. But what is the special, what is special from a spectral standpoint about Rhoda Derry?
Rhoda was a very special person because when she came to the hospital, she had been in a box bed for close to 40 years.
What is a box bed?
A box bed is basically an infantile crib.
Okay.
It's just a box on a little bit of a rocker, and it had straw in it.
Okay.
She was in it unclothed most of the time. They just changed the straw when she, you know, when there was excrement and everything, and then there was mice and everything living in there with her. Well, she lived in this box for close to 40 years, so her legs were drawn up. And we have a picture of Rhoda on the website too. You can see her where her legs are drawn. She looks basically like a frog hopping along the floor. But this woman was so insane, she clawed out her own eyes, busted out her own teeth. And the story of her is just...
It's a heartbreaking story.
It's heartbreaking, but she actually did more for mental health than anybody else, because George Zeller, the person that was running the hospital at the time, used her to get more money, more funding for mental health because of her situation. So she ended up doing more for future patients than anybody else ever was because of her story.
Is there supposedly also the ghost of Rhoda Derry out there, or?
I have not seen it, but I've heard people talk about that she possibly
Right.
tugged on their pants when they were in that cemetery.
Because the way she got around was she would sit on her butt and then she would use her arms to push her around. So if they did see her spirit, it would be a short spirit. You would either confuse it like a child or you know, something like that. So.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Weiss's interest in the Bowen building. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Peorian. I'm with Richard and Trish Weiss, co-founders of the Save the Bowen Foundation that wants to keep the former state hospital in Bartonville alive and haunting. As I understand it, Richard, you already saved the Bowen building from the wrecking ball once.
Right. When I first seen it, way back in 2005, I actually saw the building. It was for sale on eBay.
Okay.
And I tried to work with the previous owner to save it, because one of the things in the article said you could use the limestone brick to build something else. So I didn't want that to happen. So I tried working with him to try to get grants and things to try to save it. That didn't work out because he was so busy, we couldn't get together to try to get all the information that's required to try to do some kind of grant. So in 2007, I set up Save the Bowen Foundation, set up a 501c3, and then we actually worked with the owner and purchased the property in the name of the foundation. And so that's basically saving it one time. That wasn't the end of it though. Right after we purchased the property, the village at that time, the previous administration, posted the other buildings that we purchased at the same time and then tore them down just a few months later.
Oh.
It would have been nice that they told us they were going to do that beforehand, because I wouldn't have purchased it and had a mortgage on those buildings had they told me that. And I'd went to the village from 2005 all the way through 2008 when we purchased it, and they never mentioned that one time. But anyway, so we saved it at that time. Then we began to run tours and stuff to try to get funds in to fix the roof, maybe change out windows and stuff like that, because most of those are broken out. As we were doing tours, then someone complained, I guess, to the health department. The health department came, and the health department shut us down because there is asbestos in the building. Very little, but there's asbestos in it. And since then, we've been trying to do outside events and such to get enough money to get back inside.
Okay. Why did you want to save this building? You said yourself you're scientific.
I am. It had nothing to do with being haunted or anything like that.
Okay.
When I first seen it on eBay, there wasn't a mention of being haunted or anything at the time. It was just, I'm very much into architecture and that type of thing. That's what lured me to the building and the history. Once I came up and viewed the building, I didn't want to see it tore down. You come up Pfeiffer Road and you see it. It's a magnificent structure, even in the condition it's in now. And it's physically, structurally sound. Now it's got issues, obviously. There's places where water has done a lot of damage. Kids have broken out the windows, vandalism, things like that. But structurally it's sound. We've had an engineer from Bradley come and look at it. We also had an architect from Peoria come in and view it for the city before the city has put any funds in. They're going to help us with TIF funds to do the abatement. They would not do that until they seen that it was structurally sound, because they don't want to put good money to bad, obviously, which I don't want them to either. And so it is very structurally sound, but it has issues, obviously. But the biggest thing is to get the abatement done before we can get back in and make it a revenue-producing property.
Are you still looking for other investors?
Absolutely.
Does it surprise you that, given the growing interest in the paranormal, especially since cable TV, that you haven't found anybody willing to invest?
It really doesn't surprise me, because we had our issues with the village at the time. We were unable to even show anybody inside the building, because I'm not even allowed in the building at this time. It's hard to try to show somebody a building that you can't even let them inside. Even though you've got other properties that are viable doing the same thing, like Waverly Hills in Kentucky. You have Trans-Allegheny Hospital that's in West Virginia that's bringing in over 700 grand a year, doing the exact same thing we want to do. Waverly Hills brought in over 3 million in their first year. So the interest is there. When we were open for our tours in just a little over 28 days, we had people from as far away as India come to tour our building. That was with no advertising at all. So the interest is there. It's just you got to get the doors open, and then you do as much work to it as you can at a time.
Okay. We're going to take a break now for messages from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to talk with the Weisses about the plans that they have for Bowen Building's future. But first, here is our own Kevin Kaiser to talk about what's going on in the literary and culinary world. Please stay tuned.
When you read up on the latest publishing industry news, which I'm sure you all do, you often hear about the stagnation and contraction of the book business over the years. Now, that's generally true when it comes to fiction and contemporary literature, but there are certain segments that are booming, specifically children's books and graphic novels about the undead. Note to self, write a book about baby zombies. Another booming segment is music, or more specifically, books about musicians and bands. From the masters to the meh, you're sure to find a title or two on most popular bands, and perhaps the greatest amount of ink and pulp has been devoted to the classic rock world, which abounds with books about the Beatles, Dylan, Zeppelin, and the Stones. But one monster group has remained relatively unrepresented in the print world, and that's The Who, or as I like to call them, The Ooh. Now this might be due to a number of reasons. It could be because eminent rock writer Dave Marsh published a massive tome in 1983 called Before I Get Old. It might also be due to the relatively quiet public existence of the living members of the band, Roger Daltrey and Townsend, as well as the equally quiet non-existence of the non-living members Keith Moon and John Entwistle. But that's all about to change, as Pete Townsend's memoir, Who I Am, or Who I Am, is set to be published this October. Previously, Townsend published a book called Horse's Neck, which was more of an impressionistic work of fiction, but that's nothing compared to this memoir. Unlike the Beatles, Stones, and a lot of other great bands whose songs were created through direct collaboration, Pete wrote all of the Who's songs, lyrics, and melodies by himself at home. He would record these in a makeshift home studio and then present the completed tracks to the band. From there, of course, each member would add their own creative flair, so to speak. That's why this memoir is kind of a big deal. Unlike Lennon and McCartney or Page and Plant, who wrote in tandem, or the Stones, who improv together in the studio, Townsend was the primary creative force in The Who, similar to Brian Wilson and the Beach Boys. This 400-page hardcover book, which follows Townsend's life from childhood through the heyday of The Who and into the present, will be the final word on one of the world's greatest and loudest bands. And believe it or not, there's a Peoria connection to this story. The Who famously played the Opera House at Expo Gardens in 1968. Go to the literary section on Peoria.com and you can actually see the clip from that show. And pre-order a copy of Who I Am, Who I Am, Pete Townsend's long-awaited memoir today. Oh, and one other thing, today's my dad's birthday, so happy birthday, Jer.
I'm back talking with Richard and Trish Weiss about the former Peoria State Hospital, or Peoria Asylum. Right now, the building cannot be open for tours, correct?
That is correct.
The state has red tagged it.
That is correct.
Why is that?
Because of what asbestos is in the building, which there's not a lot of it, but
Enough
there's enough to have it shut down, yes.
That's interesting. What's going to happen next then?
We have been working with the Village of Bartonville since they've changed administrations, totally different picture. We've been asking them, they have a fund set aside called TIF funds that you try to bring in businesses, which is what we want to do with this building. We want it to become a revenue producing, pay more taxes. We want it to do all that stuff. But to do it, you have to get it open. So the first step to that is get it abated. We made an application back in 2008 for TIF funds. It took till now, just on the 12th of this month, that we got approval for a redevelopment agreement with the use of TIF funds to do the abatement. So we're doing a loan closing later this week, and then we will commence on the abatement of the project.
Okay, in the interest of time, our time frame,
Okay?
the closing, by the time this show airs, the closing
Will have happened.
Will have happened.
Yes, sir.
Then you can go in and you have to get rid of the asbestos.
We can't go into it. Qualified contractor will go in, abate the building, turn it over to us. We'll have the village send in an inspector to do a safety fire inspection, which we've already done the stuff for that, but when they do the abatement, they may take some of that stuff out.
Okay.
They'll make some new requirements. We'll do that work as well, which will take probably 2 to 3 days. Do that work, and then it'll be open for tours.
Okay.
So we should have that available by the end of July.
Now you're pre-selling private paranormal investigation / ghost hunts.
Correct?
That you want to start in August, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. $100 per person for all night.
That's correct.
$50 per person for half a night. So that shows there, and I'm sure that those will get booked up pretty quickly once it's available. You're wanting to capitalize on the haunted aspect. Long range. What do you plan?
What do I want? If I won the lottery and got to pick exactly what I wanted in it, it would be in the upper floor, I would like either luxury apartments, because it's got 25 and 30-foot ceilings, or in the next 2 floors, we're going to have bed and breakfast, so that top floor may become like banquet facilities and stuff like that for the haunted bed and breakfast. And then the bottom floor will be commercial space, and the basement will be a museum for the hospital. But I also understand, since we're looking for an investor, whoever puts in the money is going to determine what goes in that. Plus, there has to be plans done, to see market studies done to see if it would support that many units of hotel or whatever. Because if it wouldn't support 30 units of hotel, obviously 2 floors may be commercial space for other businesses and such. So,
if there's truly paranormal activity in the building, as you believe there is, would people want to live there?
sure.
I mean, if there's paranormal activity and it's real paranormal activity, it's going to be there regardless.
Well, there are people who go out and they look for houses, specifically looking for haunted houses to live in. These people go around and they find houses up for sale, and they read into the area, try to find out if they can find some haunted history on it, and if they can, they try to live in these houses just for the fun of it.
A lot of people want to experience it.
They want to experience the unknown.
I could see spitting in eyes.
And paranormal doesn't necessarily mean someone trying to hurt you or anything. It just means odd stuff happening. It's the excitement, just like people want to ride roller coasters and stuff. They like that excitement. People want to go to haunted houses. They like that stuff.
But these people don't stay in the haunted houses very long. Once they found them, that's when they go back up for sale. They just wanted the experience, and then that's enough.
Why not rent it for a day or two? Then?
See, that would be my plan. That's what
why,
I would do.
That's why the bed and breakfast.
But exactly, that's why the bed and breakfast.
And then if you do the bed and breakfast, you do want to change that to banquet facilities and such, where it's not permanent apartments.
Now, part of the appeal of the building right now is, okay, you're not going to fix it up to the point where it's going to lose its haunted ambiance, are you?
Well, it doesn't matter what you do to the building. That doesn't change it. It's the grounds. That whole area was the hospital. The hospital covered several hundreds of acres.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if, well, it does matter to me, but it wouldn't matter if that building was gone and they put a brand new building there. It could still be haunted because it's the grounds that it's on that are haunted, not the building itself.
There's a brand new warehouse building that's right behind the Bowen building.
Yes.
That the people who have had businesses in there have claims of activity in that building, and it's a brand new building. So I mean, if you put a brand new building on that lot, it's still going to be haunted. So I think restoring it and fixing it up could possibly bring more activity.
Stirs up the ghost.
Well, okay. Thank you both for joining me today.
You're very
Thank you
welcome.
for having us.
I hope you've enjoyed today's program and are planning your own ghost hunting excursion to Bartonville. I know I am. And remember that you can see this and other episodes of The Peorian on our website, thepeorian.com, including a little extra conversation that doesn't make it to this broadcast. Have a good week.
Ooh.